years. I worked in the classroom as a teacher, director, program director, and then moved to administration. My mom was an educator, and I love everything culturally responsive and equity. So I started my own consulting company where I share things about maturity with our education world. Our session is about the student visibility framework. It is an equity-centered approach to capture learning. So as we dive in, feel free to take notes. And of course, I will definitely share my slides with you. All right. So our session outcomes, as far as our session outcomes, we'll review a clear, actionable framework. We'll also identify and address anything in your classrooms that you feel is invisible, especially the students in an online learning environment. We'll audit current course design and data practices to distinguish between surface level engagement metrics and meaningful evidence of learning and apply at least one strategy to design an assignment or interaction point to better capture student thinking and participation. Additionally, you will have the opportunity to use your data in a more intentional way. So I know that sometimes we're in the classrooms and we're required to encapsulate data. Sometimes once we rate that data or we get that developmental level, it stops there. And teachers often say, I'm done. But we're going to look at data and say, where do we go next? How do we drive student knowledge? How do we drive student education? How do we get them to the next developmental level to where they need to be? Additionally, this is our agenda. Why visibility matters, defining indivisible students, student invisibility framework, auditing your course data, redesigning one interaction assignment. And of course, you'll get to ask questions and we'll have questions and answers. So here's my prompt for you. How do you currently know whether students are learning in your online course? So examples, the student will log in and sometimes it'll encapsulate how long they've been logged in. And so it'll say maybe they're on task. Maybe they met that 1 hour a day requirement or 2 hour a day requirement. Are they clicking on the pages? Are they looking at the content? Are they looking at the materials that are designed for that specific activity? Discussion posts and replies. So sometimes we require, depending on the age of your students, we require them to actively involve in discussion posts, or they can reply to a peer. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're taking the time or the legwork to actually review the content and doesn't understand, and it doesn't tell us that they understand what they're reviewing. Assignment submissions, are they on time? Are they struggling? How are you measuring those metrics? The visibility problem. So even though your students are logging in, we don't know that they're learning. Even though they're posting, we don't know that they're understanding. Even though there's the completion of the work, are they really comprehending? Is there intent behind what we want them to learn and what we want them to understand? Can they generalize? Can they master this information being presented to them? So, who becomes invisible in your classroom? Students navigating systemic barriers. So, students from low social economic backgrounds, students that may be considered the minority in your classroom, multilingual learners, students whose first language may not be English. Their first language may not even be Spanish, it could be anything, Tagalog, Mandarin, etc. If you have an educator who is teaching the students and that isn't their first language, for example, if you have a teacher who speaks only English, but you have students who speaks only Spanish, how are we navigating that? How are we helping them? Do they become invisible? Students with limited bandwidth or tech access. So we do have situations where teachers in the classrooms will say, these students are on a minimal platform or minimal data plan to the library to do their work, or they only have access to iPads or etc. So we know that iPad is like a limited resource, whereas if you're using a laptop, you have more features, more capability to use different things. So are there issues with bandwidth or tech access? Neurodivergent learners. So you may have students who come in and they may have additional supports. They may have specialists that work with them to help them understand content or to make them add meaning to what we're presenting to them. Students balancing work, caregiving, or multiple roles. So a lot of our students are working. They're working to supply money for school, or they're working to help their parents out in the home environment, or they're caregiving for a parent or a guardian, and we don't take that into consideration. We don't say, do you and what you'll need in this in the world. Well, sometimes we have students, either they're younger, where they're having sports or they're playing different sports within the field. So they have to work with the sports, they have to go to school, they have home life, etc. That can be a lot. They become invisible because one of those takes priority over the other. Equity lens for visibility. So guiding equity question, who is learning? Whose learning is easiest to see in my course? How do you take that data and say, I know that you're learning because when you completed this assignment, you were able to show your comprehension of the questions asked. You were able to answer those questions to fidelity. Whose learning is likely underrepresented? So when you're designing your online courses or you're designing content for your students, you still should have the ability to differentiate that instruction for them. Are you sending them over to YouTube? Are you supplying them with the course materials? Are you following up with them, asking them, is there any additional supports that you may need? Maybe tying community to content. So if you're presenting something in your classrooms or in your coursework, maybe connect it to community. Go out and differentiate by experiencing this. Go out and learn more about it. Go out and submerge yourself into this topic or this idea. Maybe go to the library, maybe go to the museum, etc. So making sure that there's an equity lens, it doesn't just stop behind the computer. You have to extend those learning opportunities. What is the student visibility framework? An equity-centered approach to designing online courses so that students' learning, thinking, and needs are visible through multiple forms of evidence, not just compliance or activity logs. So a lot of us have these check boxes. You're reaching and teaching, you're like, up, did it, done. I have this checkbox. I did what I'm supposed to do. So the framework is centered on it asks us to design our courses so that students' learning, thinking, and needs become visible through multiple forms of evidence, not just behaviors like those logins or postings, instead of asking students only to prove that they were present, we design opportunities for them to show how they're making sense of ideas, where they're stuck at, and what supports would help them. So it's not just the teacher designing these opportunities, students have a say in the opportunity as well. This is not about adding more grading or more surveillances. It's about more intentional, more human ways of capturing learning to ensure that you're reaching every single student and no one is left behind in the process. So, core principles, multiple ways to show learning, prioritizing depth over volume activities, centering marginalized learners in design. So the framework rests on several core principles. The first principle, of course, is the students' needs. The students need in multiple ways to show their learnings. That might be writing, that might be speaking, that might be drawing, creating media, or working collaboratively. The second principle, prioritizing depth over volume, we aim for a more richer instead of a small, superficial approach to generate lots of clicks, but shallow evidence, but without shallow evidence. The third principle is to center marginalized learners in our design decisions. So what is that? We begin by asking, how will this work for the student who are often least visible or who are well served by default structures? If it works for them, it is usually improving an experience for everyone. So it's across the board, equitable across the board. All students have the same, but additional supports as needed. Core principle two, aligning data with learning outcomes, building in reflection and metacognition, using data to adjust instruction, not just report it. So there are these three principles really align with the framework and it makes it well-rounded. So we align the data we collect with the learning outcomes. We actually see student strength in. Those ones that we don't see the student strength in, we build, we reflect, and we use that metacognition and that data to form and construct ways to make it more meaningful for our students. Those reflections make their learning visible. It helps them become more self-aware. So it's not just about what the teacher is encapsulating. It's also helping the students understand where they may be performing low, where they may need additional supports. So we commit to using data to adjust our instruction, not just to report it. That means asking, what does this pattern tell me in this data? And what can I change in my teaching or design as a result? So making it more meaningful and individualized for your students. Dimensions of visibility. So there's three dimensions. There's the cognitive visibility. What are students thinking? Social visibility. How are students connecting to the content presented? Effective visibility. How are students feeling? So of the three, you'll notice a trend. What are the students thinking? And the one that says effective visibility, how are students feeling? This is where you actually sit down. You get to know your students. You talk to your students. You have time, you have office time where you just let them vent. You let them tell you what they need. You follow the culture of the student, the individual student. So you're going to have students that they may be struggling in an area where they don't feel comfortable addressing it if you have group meetings or group online meetings, or even through the discussions, they may say, I don't feel comfortable saying that I don't know what this means, or I don't feel comfortable saying that I need additional support because we're all supposed to know. So what are your students thinking? Have some time, schedule some time to sit down, some office hours to sit down. That's mandatory to talk to your students to understand. If you allow students to say whether they want to come or whether they don't want to come, that kind of sets a threshold for them to say, no, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to. So if you make it mandatory to have maybe a 5 or 10 minute conversation with your students, you'll understand what they're thinking and where they're going and how you can best support them. The next one, we're going to skip past the social visibility. We're going to go to effective visibility. How are students feeling? Tap into that. Tap into that. Social emotional plays a huge role in how we're reaching and teaching our students, especially in an online platform where you don't really have that physical connection that you can make with your students. Talk to them and say, how are you feeling today? How was your week? Is there anything I can help you with? Is there any way that I can serve you? Once you break down those barriers, everything else falls into play. So it's a huge social emotional component that's embedded within these dimensions of visibility. Students have to understand and be willing to be vulnerable and to talk to you, even though you're their teacher. They have to be willing to say, I need help. In order to make them successful, they have to be relaxed to say, I don't understand, etc. How are students connecting? So, not just connecting with the content, connecting with other students for support. I can remember times where I'm in the classrooms and I'm like, she's just me. She learns just like me. I'm going to pair myself with her so that I can understand this better. Even though we as teachers are teaching these students, they still need to connect with their peers to add more meaning and to see it from a different perspective. So, how is that social visibility working in your online platform? You as a teacher should say, there is, let's just give them a name. We'll say Mary and Sierra. We say that Mary excels in this area and Sierra does not excel. Can I put Mary and Sierra together so that Mary can help Sierra? Or we'll say maybe Sierra has an area that she excels in and Mary needs that support as well. So pairing those students together in the online platform is essential to helping the students grow and also feel comfortable. Sometimes they're not comfortable with a teacher. They may be comfortable with a peer. From compliance to learning, from compliance to learning evidence, compliance signals. Did they show up? Did they post? Did they submit? These are those areas where when a student doesn't, when they stop coming, when they don't have enough hours on the platform, when they're not posting on time, when they're not submitting their assignments, these are red flags for us as teachers behind these screens to say, Let me reach out to you. Let me see how I can support you. Let me help you. Our goal is to make sure that they're successful. It doesn't just stop with make sure you do your discussion, make sure you post, make sure you learn. It's a continuum. It's a continuum. Letting them know that they're supported in every single thing that they're doing will help them be successful. It'll help them return the next year. It'll help them start showing up in your classrooms. Learning evidence. What did they understand? Where are they stuck? How are they growing? Using this evidence to say, this is how I'm going to reach and teach you as an individual person, not as a collective. Sometimes in these online platforms, we only see a name and an assignment. It's essential to still get to know your students, understand the barriers that they have, understand some of the challenges that they've had in prior academic or educational experiences. Have them tell the story if it's a younger child, have the parents tell you some of the areas that they used to struggle in, or some of the areas the parents feel they may need more support in. So there it's a continuum. It's not just stopping behind the screen on, did you submit your evidence? Did you submit your work? Did you do this assignment? Did you show up? It's so much more and so much more meaningful when you connect the cultures and the needs, the individual needs of your students to the online platform and to the online learning platform. Quick self-audit. So think of one online course or module. What are your top three data sources about student engagement and learning? So as a teacher, and we'll talk about this once it's open questions and answers, but I want you to jot this down or you can screenshot it. What are your top three data sources about student engagement and learning? Which should show up clearly in those data, in that data? What might be missing? Take this as a guide for you to say, am I reaching and teaching all of my students? And if not, how am I using this data to support and drive my instruction? So I invite you again, screenshot it, and we'll discuss that later. Take a moment to notice whether your current data sources make some students highly visible while leaving others more than likely unseen. This course will be the one you use for redesigning activities later. So if you see that there's a student who's excelling in all of these categories, but then there's a student who's not, how are you using that data to sustain that student who's excelling and to also bring that other student up to a level where they're excelling as well? Common online structures. So typical structures are your weekly discussion forums, auto-graded quizzes, video lectures, and embedded questions, major assignments and exams, office hours, and optional sessions. All of these are essential. Of course, all of these are essential in student growth, student development, etc. But again, I'm going to specify that one of the most important is those office hours because it gives you the opportunity to encapsulate the student's culture, to understand what they need, to understand where they are developmentally, to understand what supports you may need to do as a teacher to drive that instruction later. All of the other ones, the weekly discussions, the auto graded, it's a form of differentiating instruction. So using those graded quizzes to say, I see that there's a common trend in this area. You keep getting this question wrong. Maybe you don't understand. Or doing the weekly discussion forums, the way that you described it isn't exactly encapsulating the true meaning behind it. So you can use all of these forms as a way to drive your instruction and as a data point, but making sure that you're using those office hours and optional sessions to encapsulate and to bring in that culture. Where invisibility high structures that don't often obscure learning. So high stakes exams with no process work. I've seen a lot of exams where you're just taking the test and there's no data behind it. What's the data behind an exam? Why are you doing the exam? What's the point of the exam? And if you find that a student is not doing well in an exam, how are you driving instruction? Long one size fits all discussion prompts. I've seen time and time again where there's lots of WH questions and it becomes blurred for students. So when you ask too many questions, it's the students are like, okay, How do I answer all of this at once and add also add meaning to behind the main point or the concept? So making sure that you understand that it's not a one size fits all. So maybe you can break those questions up for your students. Ask a question, pause, let them answer. Ask a question, pause, let them answer, and then encapsulate the intent behind all of those questions. Maybe giving them a definition, maybe giving them the answers and the why behind it. No option for alternative formats or modalities. This is where the inequity comes in. There's no options for differentiation. There's no alternative formats or modalities for students who may be struggling, or for students who may have had a history of IEPs throughout their life, or may have had a history of cognitive imbalances. So, really making sure that you learn your students, you understand what you need to support them, and you incorporate that into your platform, into your online platform. Surface metric versus meaningful evidence. So number of posts, minutes in LMS, number of clicks, video completion, meaningful evidence, quality of reasoning in posts. Looking at all of this and saying, with this world of I know that a lot of our students are tech savvy and they're using AI to answer some questions or to help them approach these questions. So for us as educators, even though we know that they may do it and they may not, we want to make sure that it's meaningful. If you're using this to help you understand the concept, I want you to still be able to explain it and generalize it across environments, or show me your knowledge of this concept without sounding scripted. You'll hear a lot of times with our students there, they sound like they're reciting a poem, or they sound like they're just a definition. How can you take this into another environment and generalize it? How can you show me your understanding of this concept, the fidelity through this concept? Not just doing the assignments, not just using AI to help you understand, but how can you tell me that you truly and meaningfully understand this? How can I use data to know? We're behind computer screens. It makes it extremely hard to know that your students understand what we're teaching them and that they can use it to fidelity in the field or in their next academic journey. Data inventory activity. So data inventory, small tables. What does your LMS give you easily? What learning evidence do you wish you had? Where's the gap? So that's a big one. Where's the gap? Now I want you to think about your own course data as an inventory. Ask yourself, what data does my LMS give me is easily and automatically? Then ask, what learning evidence do I wish I had to access, but currently do not collect on a consistent basis? Consistency. That gap is important. Very often, the most meaningful information is not the information or the platforms or how the platforms are designed to capture by default. This is where course design becomes powerful because if we want better evidence, we often have to build better opportunities for the evidence to emerge. So rather than only asking what data you have, also ask what data you need. So not just what data you have, what data do you need to drive instruction? Times we're very limited on the data that we're collecting because we're following protocols and procedures, but there's also those opportunities where you have to say, maybe I have to reconstruct this data because there's a gap. So what data do you need to help students grow and develop? In your course, what is one group of students learning is likely underrepresented in your current data? What makes you think so? So when you look at how you're structuring your classrooms or how you're implementing content or what books you're including or how you're differentiating instruction, there's always a student who doesn't fit the box, who doesn't fit that checkbox. How are you reaching and teaching them? It's okay to veer from your normal protocol or normal classroom or normal online environment to say, I see this one student is falling behind, whereas all of my other students are where they need to be. So I need to give a little more time to this student. I need to differentiate instruction for this student. I need to look at this student's data and say, this is how I'm going to support you. This is what you need. creating that time and that space to be able to bring that student to where all of your other students are is equitable. It's essential. So at this point, I like to invite a short discussion. Maybe you can go over to the chat and reflect on the prompts. So in your courses, what is one group of students whose learning is likely underrepresented? So think about your courses and think about your experiences. You can put it in the chat and we'll revisit it later. But think about what student is likely underrepresented. I know we have a lot of course designs and equity designs where we say African American boys are more likely to be expelled or suspended. Think about those things. How can we shape the data to ensure that those numbers decrease, to ensure that we're reaching those populations that are underserved or that are on the radar for more for being expelled or suspended or I guess, to experience biases in our education platforms. Put it in the chat and let me know what you think. Excuse me. The framework in action. To increase visibility, we can redesign tasks, redesign interactions, redesign data use. We've been talking about a lot of data. I can remember a song that says, women lie, men lie, numbers don't lie. Data doesn't lie. Use your data to fidelity. We're going to shift from understanding the problem to applying the framework. So there are three main ways we can increase student visibility in practice. First, we can redesign tasks so that they generate richer evidence of learning. Second, we can redesign interactions so more students can participate in the online platform in ways that strengthen their needs and their wants. Third, we can redesign how we use data so it becomes a tool for instructional design, making decision making more meaningful rather than only a reporting mechanism. So again, and I'm guilty of it as an educator too, where I just use that data at a point in my career where it was just I'm reporting. I'm reporting, or I've clicked this box, I've locked it, I'm done. Now what's next? What's next is a continuum using that data to say, where do I go next with helping my students understand this new concept or helping my students in those gray areas grow and develop so that their 360 encapsulation is covering everything that they need and ensuring their academic journey, a positive flight onto their academic journey. Redesigning tasks in multiple modalities. So instead of written discussion posts, add options like a short audio or video responses. Again, differentiating instruction. We're being equitable here. So adding those audio or video responses. Some people don't just want to watch a video. They just want to sit, they're driving or they're busy. Kids are busy. They're going to this or they're doing that, etc. So just giving them an audio option. If they spend most of their time in the car, that's a great way to just let them hear it. There's this approach, and I really forget the name of it, but it says that the more that you do things with repetition using audio, the more that it embeds in your subconscious and your cognitive. So if they're listening to these audios all the time, they're getting these concepts, it's embedding into their brain these concepts. And now, as a teacher, we have to say, now that you have it, it's a script. Now that you have the script in your brain, how can I help you generalize this into an environment or into an action or into the next steps in understanding the concept? Annotated visuals or concept maps. So you can build concept maps for students to see an outline of an idea using your Venn diagram, etc. Documents. Collaborative documents, I would say, there's like those parent shares. So having a student paired with another student to collaborate or to see things outside of their own perspective, to hear how another student or peer sees or envisions or understands the task that we've assigned to them. Redesigning tasks, process, and product. Make the product visible. So, what do I mean by that? By making the product visible. Drafts and feedback stages, think aloud reflections, screenshots or recordings of work in progress, brief check ins. What do you find challenging this week? Checking in. And a lot of the educators say, well, we have so many students. How can I check in with all of them? You can create an online platform where Students can talk amongst each other, and every once in a while, pop in and say, hey, just coming back and reviewing some. I noticed that you guys were all saying you're struggling in the same area. How can I help you? Here's a video, here's an audio, or let me sit here for this next 10 minutes and walk you through what I mean and check for understanding, check that knowledge. So creating maybe a platform, and I know a lot of the kids use things like TikTok, et cetera, whatever you got to do to reach and teach these students, use your tools. There's a lot of technology out here to help you reach these students in a way that they feel comfortable with learning. So creating an online platform or an online area where students talk to each other and then every once in a while pop in and say, all right, let me read this. Let me sit down and take 30 minutes to read and see what they're struggling. And maybe they don't feel comfortable in the moment telling you they don't understand or they didn't learn anything or etc. Redesigning. So we're redesigning visibility for quiet students. So of course we're going to have those students in our classrooms where they're introverted, where they're there all the time, but they're not always participating. So allowing private check-ins and or journals. So creating journals within your online platform where students can reflect. I can remember a time where early in the morning I create my journal. I will reflect in my journal and I would say, I don't understand this. I don't know this. And so I would put in my journal, revisit this or tell the teacher that I need to learn about this, etc. So use journals, having students write in their journals and and if they want, they can allow you access to it, or they can say, no, it's just my private journal to kind of release what I'm feeling or to release what I don't understand. So the students can either have a private journal or they can allow you access to that journal. Some students are not that face-to-face or conversational students. Like they don't want to talk to you about how they feel. They want to write it and they want you to respond and they don't want to have a conversation with you. And that's okay. That's how you differentiate learning for them. Offering small group peer discussions. Again, you're going to hear me revisiting this over and over. Having them meet with their peers. These are students that are the same age. They're experiencing things in the world at the same time that us as teachers being older, we're just like, I don't understand that. So maybe I can pair you with someone who can maybe help you or help guide you, allowing flexible timing for contributions. So that's kind of a gray area. It's often hard with that whole time concept to allow that flexible time for contributions. But if you have a more flexible platform, by all means do it. Providing structured prompts for introverts and multilingual learners. So again, I'm going to suggest you pair that with using the journals. For those students who are just not, I want to talk on video to you. I want to talk on the phone to you. Allow them to put it into the journal and have an option of whether they want to share that journal with you, that specific journal topic with you, so that you can help and support them. You're going to have students who will say, I don't want to share any of my journal. But then you may see through the data that they're declining in certain areas. So that's when you have to say, okay, you're introvert, you don't want to share, you don't want to talk, but I have to help you succeed. I have to find a way culture, culturally to reach and teach you, to find your love language, to find a way to help you. So maybe sending some extra documents to them and saying, hey, I know you're really busy, you don't, you're an introvert or et cetera, whatever. Here's a video. Tell me if this helps you. And if you once you watch the video, tell me your understanding of the video. So maybe sending them audio. Listen to this audio. Go ahead and text me and tell me your understanding of this audio. So making it a requirement without making it a requirement. Redesigning interactions through feedback loops. So ask students to respond to feedback. So when students are posting or they're submitting their assignments, questions, ask additional questions. I've seen educators where they would just ask an initial question in a discussion, and the student would submit the assignment and they will go, thank you for submitting your assignment. This is great. I see that you understand the concept. What else? What else? Can you tell me what you thought about this? Or can you tell me your idea of what this person was experiencing through this issue they had? Just really getting those opening questions out there for clarification to make sure that your students are understanding. Using polls and quick surveys and mid-module. So using polls. Polls are a great way, and it's really fast. Having a repository where your students submit answers to polls or quick surveys. Invite students to choose one area where they want specific feedback. So letting your students choose where they want you to insert yourself as an educator instead of you saying, I'm using this data. I see that you're not meeting these data points or what's set academically for you, but allowing the student to say, even if I am meeting this, I still want to understand a little more. I still want a little more clarification. So here's an area that I want you to help me with, teacher. Instead of the teacher always driving instruction, the teacher always using data to drive instruction. Ask the students what they want and what they need. I guarantee they'll tell you. Redesigning data use from reports to decisions. Move from who is behind to what patterns do we see? What support can I add? What can I redesign next time? And I'm going to add another one there. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? So that's an important thing. What do you need to be successful? Not just what support can I add, but what do you need? What do you think you need to be successful? Example discussion redesign. So before one long weekly discussion prompt we would have for our students, we would grade based on the number of posts and the number of replies. Make sure you reply to two students or etc. So after two shorter prompts targeting specific outcomes, even for your youngest learners, choose a modality, text, or kids are using technology to fidelity. When I say that is your best friend, that's going to be educator, your best friend. Use this text, use that audio, use that video. You're going to see it open up a whole different door for you and your students, for the connection you're making with your students. From our littles all the way down to our teenagers, they are all technology savvy. Educators, I know sometimes we will say, I'm not good with technology. Ask them to help you. They can teach you, teacher. Ask them to help you. Remember, it's about them and what they need. Most of the time, these students are tech savvy and they can navigate you through to help you support them. It's okay for your students to be teachers as well. Rubik focuses on reasoning and connection to peers. You guys all know about Rubik's. You guys have been using it for years and years. A short reflection. What did you learn from this discussion? So even though they're posting in the discussions when you do your feedback, what did you learn? Give me one thing that you learned. Give me two things that you learned. Tell me how you can apply this, etc. So not just allowing students to post in a discussion, but also having a continuum. What did you learn from it? What are some areas that you feel like you want more information on, etc. Example assignment redesign. So before we had those single high stakes exams with auto graded questions. Low stakes is practice quizzes and explanations. So even though they're taking these quizzes, you want them to give explanations behind the answers or give explanations to show their understanding of a concept. So short concept application tasks, scenarios or cases. So telling them tell me a scenario. Tell me how you would apply this in the real world. Tell me your understanding of this in your terms, in your verbiage, not based on that academic language that you just did on your surveys or on your exams. Tell me how you can explain it in your words, etc. So student created summary artifacts, infographics, organizers, or short videos. Again, as we said before, students are tech savvy all the way from preschool all the way to high school. Have them be creative, have them use these platforms to show their understanding or to show how they encapsulate or how they envision these topics that we're teaching them. Into the module reflection. So whenever you're done with a concept or a module or an idea, have your students tell you what they've learned throughout the entire module. What were one of the highlights that you really enjoyed or that you really feel you connected with within this module? So even though we have the quizzes, etc., when we're done with a concept or a module, go back and insert the understanding and ideas of what you taught them. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what you enjoyed. Tell me what areas you need support in, etc. Choose your focus point. A discussion activity, a quiz or a test, a major assignment, a key interaction, check-ins, office hours, group work. We've talked about that. It is essential. I know you're a teacher, I know you're busy, but is it essential to have those check-ins and those office hours? Check-ins are different from office hours. Check-ins are you actually reaching out to your students and saying, "Hey, I'm just checking in with you. How you feeling? Need anything? Can I support you anywhere?" Office hours are where students can initiate that. I want to sit down and have some time with you because I don't understand this, or I need help with this. If you as a teacher reach out to your students to connect with them, I guarantee that opens up a different level of support and engagement and openness and willingness to engage in these topics and to tell you what they need for additional support. So making that connection, connecting the content culture to who they are and to what they need. Apply the framework planning sheet. So for your chosen element, you might currently be invisible here. What dimensions of visibility are missing? Cognitive, social, affective. What is one concrete change to capture learning more fully? What is one change that you can do within your platform or within your classrooms to capture learning fully in all its entirety without those check boxes or take this test? How can you ensure that these students are learning from behind a screen? That's the hardest task ever, to make sure that every single student, if you have 30 students in your classrooms, how do you know that every single one is progressing toward the endpoint, progressing and understanding any content that you're presenting? As you work on your selected course elements, use these three planning questions to guide you. First, who might currently be invisible in this part of our course? Second, which dimensions of visibilities are missing here? Cognitive, social, affective, or some combinations of the three. So maybe it could be all of them. And third, what is one concrete change you can make to better capture learning, participation, or needs? Try to keep your idea practical and specific. The goal is to leave today with a redesign that you can actually test in your module or in your teams or in your classrooms. Really look at the frameworks as saying, this is my plan. This is how I'm going to make sure that all of my students are visible. This is where this student is academically. This is where the student is struggling. So when you take that struggle and you see other students are struggling in the same areas, pair them together. If there's no other students struggling, okay, what's another way? Maybe I'll use my office hours to help you. So creating a platform of support for your students. What did you decide to change? So thinking about these prompts to yourself, what did I decide to change and how did it work out? Whose visibilities will this change to support? So I know as educators, we can visually see in our heads which students are not where they need to be. Creating a spreadsheet and saying, this student is struggling in math. This student is struggling in reading, but this student is excelling in math and this student is excelling in reading. Pairing them together or creating additional resources to help them excel. Sometimes you can't just have it in your head. You have to make a clear plan for yourself, a clear visible spreadsheet that says, this is how I'm going to support you. This is the areas that you're declining in. These are the areas that I'm going to pair you with a student, going to create some time to work with you one-on-one, etc. So I know it's all in your head, but you have to share it. Sharing is creating a spreadsheet and reflecting on that spreadsheet and saying, okay, now I can see it visually. Now this is the support that I'm going to offer you. From idea to implementation. So next 30 days, identify one course or one topic, implement one visibility focused redesign. Collect a small piece of feedback from students. Note one equity insight you gain. So creating your spreadsheet for the next 30 days, I want you to focus on one area for your student that you want to help them grow in. Implement one visibility focused redesign. So the redesign is, am I going to support you through audio? Am I going to support you through video? Am I going to support you through schedule every Wednesday? We're going to meet from 1 to 1:15. How am I going to support you and help you grow? Taking that data on your spreadsheet and saying, we met this day. we covered this topic. And then as you use your real data rubrics or your real data assessments in your classrooms, look and see if your student is growing, if they're growing and developing based on what they need as far as your supports, your visibility focus. I implemented some videos for you. Did those videos work for you? If they didn't, maybe it's audio, maybe you're audible, visual, tactile. So really taking those supports and saying, this is what I'm doing to fidelity and consistently. And now I'm going to go look at my data. You were here and now you're here. So what I'm doing is working. Sustaining it throughout, or even adding more components to help reach and teach your students. Key takeaways. Logins and clicks are not enough to understand learning. The student visibility framework centers equity by making thinking, participation, and needs visible in multiple ways. Small intentional design shifts can significantly increase who is seen and supported in your online classrooms. It's not just about being behind a screen, following checkboxes, and doing your discussions and telling them great job and giving them feedback. Step outside of the screen. So thank you. Thank you for joining my session. Um, Again, I am Dr. Erica Dallas with Culturally Connected Consulting. My contact information is there. I want you to think to yourself, what is one action you'll commit to this week? What is one thing that you'll do? Are you going to create your spreadsheet? Are you going to list all those students? Are you going to say, I as a teacher know that little Bobby is struggling in math. So I know that behind this screen, I'm only giving him quizzes to do. Can I send him some videos this week? Every Tuesday, I'm going to schedule myself to send out videos to little Bobby. Or maybe you're saying that little Mary is struggling and she is an audible learner. Maybe I'll send her an audio of me reciting some things for her to practice and study, etc. Maybe you have a student who is a dual language learner. Maybe I'm going to take this content, use Google and translate it into Spanish for the student to support them, etc. So, what is one action you'll commit to this week? You can pop that in the chat as well. So, I thank you all for joining me. And now I'm going to look in the chat to see what we have and if I can answer any questions for you.
Hi, this is Iona. I really appreciate those great ideas that you made mention. I thought about
Thank you.
some of it, but I'm like, oh, send an audio video for the student. I never thought about some of those, at least that particular one. So thank you for the great ideas.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for coming.
Sure.
Let's see. We have a question. So Ali said, I do a weekly module self-reflection assignments for my online students. I ask students to reflect on an important concept they learned, what they feel proud of, where they got stuck, their time management skills, and what could be adjusted. Questions and a reminder to connect with me or a tutor to get support. Thank you for sharing some new ideas that I can incorporate and a framework to systemically consider. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're in the day and age of technology. These kids are better than us in technology, and so we must use it, right? We must
They
use it to
sure are.
fidelity.
AI.
Yeah, very
Yes.
skilled, very skilled. I have a little one and he's only 3. And the other day he says, let me show you. And he actually showed me how to navigate. I'm like, I
Wow.
cannot believe this. I'm a teacher and I cannot believe my 3-year-old who just turned 3 today showed me how to navigate technology. So use it to fidelity, everyone. Do we have any more questions, comments, need an additional information?
There's another question in the chat. Do you have an example of what you might look at in a spreadsheet you mentioned?
Well, I don't have an example here, but I can, and hopefully I can do that, Chelsea. Maybe they can send a private message, and I can send you an example of one. So, if you want, send me a private message with your email, and I can send it to you. I have several examples. I'm sure you'll love it. Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the insightful presentation, Dr. Dallas.
You're welcome.
There's so many great concrete strategies we can apply to our online classes immediately.
Absolutely. 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 Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thanks all for being here. This is the last session in this Zoom room, but we will continue to have sessions in room A and B until, I believe, for the next few hours. I don't want to say uh, Pacific time, we're at 1, so until 3 o'clock here, we'll continue to have sessions. Then we're back again Tuesday and Wednesday for a full day of learning. Thank you all. Thanks again, Dr. Dallas.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.